Okay, this video is going to focus on platinum, and if we have time, we'll look at a little bit at palladium as well. And we're going to look at the really long-term trend, and then look at the current daily cycle to see where we may stand, where we might expect a bottom sort of next. So if we start with the annual chart, and this is where every candle is 1 year, I like to use this chart to look at the long-term trend. In this case, the data only goes back to 2005, so it's not as much data as you can typically get for something else. But the point here is visually, you can see we've been declining ever since this huge peak in 2008, the global financial crisis. We had this huge bearish outside year where we took out all of these gains. We took out the gains from 2005, 6, and 7 all in one shot. And we basically consolidated inside this range. You can see the low here that year was 747. We consolidated inside that range for many years until the COVID crash really allowed us to plunge, make a new low. And then look at this, a big, beautiful yearly hammer. And in the same way, this is a bearish outside year, this is a bullish outside year, right? You see, we, made a new low and then just came out the other side of it, took out and made, multi-year highs here. And so last year was a dud. This is pretty ugly bearish candle. But as I always say, you have to have follow through. A bearish candle that doesn't have any follow through is meaningless, right? And so this would kind of imply that, we maybe have just topped out. We maybe just made a lower high here, this high being lower than, let's say, this one, right? Like really long term. But so far we're green. It's obviously very early. We're only in the sort of beginning of the second month. But once we make a high above here, that's 1339. We can kind of mark that. You can see we could be in for a very kind of rapid move to maybe like this area, which gets us to like the 1700s, and easily back to all-time highs. And so if we zoom in a little bit to look at the cycle count, I'll look at the sort of call it the yearly cycle, which, as I always mention, is measured in months. And so this is the yearly cycle going back to the time that we have data here, and you can see it's not incredibly consistent, but it's in the neighborhood of 20 to 25-ish days, right? And you can see even in this cycle here where we had our top on month 7 and then our low didn't come until month 31. That next cycle was actually a shorter one. It was 19 months. That was actually the COVID crash cycle, which was shorter for a lot of in a lot of markets and on a lot of time frames. But you can see that balances you out to about 50, which gets you to an average of around 25. So it is very possible that we actually have a yearly cycle low printed in December. It is a monthly swing low. So you can see once we went above this candle, that high right there at 993.46, we had a monthly swing low. So very bullish on month 21. We topped out on month 11 after the furious rally out of the sort of COVID crash. This could be your sort of half cycle high, half cycle low, your cycle low, or excuse me, cycle high, and then your cycle low. Not There isn't always a sort of halfway point, but in this case, this is sort of pretty kind of textbook. So it's a question of, are we going to continue to move up and then kind of roll over and maybe we actually get our low on month 25 around where the average is, or did we make a relatively early yearly cycle? You could argue that it's going to be the former because this was a very short cycle. So maybe this isn't going to be another relatively short cycle. So maybe we are going for 25, because right now we're in month 23 of February. So a low in month 25 would be a low in March, which would also coincide with a low in stocks. We'll just have to continue watching this. You can see we're trying to, this is the 10 period moving average. We're trying to get where we were above that. We've pulled back in the so far in the month, and so we can zoom into the daily, which is going to give us our real actionable signal. The reason for that is it's important to understand every intermediate cycle low, which is also a weekly cycle low, same thing. Every intermediate cycle low is also a daily cycle low. And every yearly cycle low is also an intermediate cycle low, which is also a daily cycle low. Which is to say, if you follow the daily cycles, you will catch the week. If you follow the daily cycles, you'll catch the weekly cycle lows and the yearly cycle lows because those fall on a daily cycle low. And if you think about how the daily cycle has looked since, like let's say going back to what is this, the middle of 2020, we've had a cycle that's pretty long, right? Right, like every cycle going back to let's say July of 2020 has been about 60, at least 60 days. We're right now on day 36. The high was on day 29. You can see in bullish cycles, the high tends to come around after day 40. So you see day 46 here, day 40, day 51. This one was, do I have that? Maybe I don't think I have that labeled, but you can see that cycle, this cycle here was definitely very right translated. Um, so we may see another high. Again, this is day 36. Maybe we make another high next week, but we're probably expecting a daily cycle low around somewhere around March 10th, which again would coincide with the idea that maybe we overshoot. Like these things aren't exact, and it's not March 10th. It's actually closer to the end of March, and that's when you also get your ICL and your YCL. That would mean we're making a low below here, which is at 901. So we'll have to see. Right now, this is certainly a bull flag pattern. You would argue. At the same time, uh, we know that stocks are probably moving into a yearly cycle low, and so it's entirely possible that we do see new low, fresh lows here, or we could also have a mild YCL. Uh, any number of scenarios can play out from here, but this is the thing to be watching here. So again, this today was day 36. If we assume a daily cycle that's at least 60 days, that takes you into some point in March. And we're going to want to watch to see if we get another high. Because if this were to stay the high, then it would be, mildly left translated, right? Like if you have a daily cycle that's 60 days, but the high is on day 29, then it's mildly left translated. This is very left translated. This cycle that, was 65 days long and the high came on day 18. So you're obviously better than that. But ideally, I would want to see a high above here, so above 1111, which would, really show you that, the ICL is probably off the table. And I'll jump over to Palladium really quickly. I think the most important thing to know about for Palladium is that we have a quarterly swing low in place. So this is your quarterly candle from Q4 2021, and this is your quarterly candle so far for Q1 2022. It's obviously still relatively early. We're about to get to the midpoint, I guess, and you can see we're getting a pullback on a lower time frame. But this would be incredibly bullish, right? This would be a sign that we're advancing on the highest of time frames. And if you look at the 12-month candle, you can see it's just an inside year so far. And so really the only place to go is to make a new high here. Obviously we could also make a new low. That's kind of the problem. On this really long time frame, you're a little bit in no man's land. But you can see on the quarterly chart again, you do have a swing low in place. And so given that, your sort of risk point is really this low here, which we're pretty close to, or this high, I should say, the high of this candle, which is 22.15. I think we could easily undercut this and then still continue higher. But that gives you a little bit of a sort of ballpark of, or it at least orients you. And if you look on the monthly level, right, this is the swing low, the monthly swing low from December. that caused the quarterly swing low. And obviously this is January, nice big green candle, and we have a red inside month so far in February. So it's really a question of how does this resolve? And again, thinking about multiple time frame analysis on the daily, that is just this structure here, which kind of looked like a bull flag, but now well, no, we did not make a new low on the day, but really close. I mean, it looks like it wants to make a new low, let's say Monday, and that gets you to, at that point, you're essentially a failed bull flag. But this is very much the similar structure to platinum, a high on day 29 so far. We'll have to see if we make another high above this, which is 24.44, 68. So that's the update on platinum and palladium.